Yeah, wasn't expecting that to be a long-term thing.
All right. Hello and welcome to For Future Generations, episode 19. It is June the 8th, and it is the Lord's Day, my dudes. We are happy to have you all along for the ride, and welcome. I am Geoffrey, and I am joined, as always, by my wonderful friend, Sean. Sean, how are you, man?
I am good. Today was the Sunday of Pentecost, of course. We all wore our red. One guy even has like a flame bowling shirt type thing that he wears on Pentecost.
Geoffrey and I am joined, as always, by...
That's always fun. Jeff was just listening to his own podcast as he records it.
I am trying to set up my Facebook on the one side because it is always... it'll always launch and it will never be... it'll never be public, so I have to jump in there and try and change that real quick. But
while you're working on that, you may have noticed that we now have intro music, which I recorded, and the only thing I didn't do on that is the drums. I did the bass and the guitar on that, and it is a riff that I have had in my back pocket for about 3 years ish now. And I always say, you know what? If I have a podcast, I'm gonna record this, and that'll be the intro. So, Lord willing, that will be a consistency moving forward.
Yeah, and I'll see about trying to turn it into a more proper intro. But I like the music. I like the riff. It's very fun. But in the meantime. Let's get into today's topic. So the title of this podcast is Fatherless Projection. And for those of you who are in the right-wing Christian manosphere on Twitter, we get a lot of our subjects from Twitter, as it were. But there was an article that was posted, some absolute cringe. Yes. And posted by a guy who goes by the name of Will Spencer, and it was reposted by Douglas Wilson and some accolades of his. And the big takeaway, I mean, the name of the post itself is provocative. It's the dangerous secret your young men are keeping. Neo-Nazi thought has entered the church.
Yeah, watch out there.
So, everybody I don't like is a Nazi, and Nazis are bad. So, but there were some things we wanted to address in this article. I have a list of things. I have a list of people that need to be doxxed right here. But no, I have my homework. Some thoughts that I had when reading this article, and Sean, I'm sure you did too. But let's dive into it. First thing first. Right after the title, this let's see. Let's pop this over here. I don't know. It might be better to do it like this, because that way we can see what's going on here. But your young men are keeping neo-Nazi thoughts. And he begins this article, and I don't know how well you can read this, but he begins this article with a quote. Now, this quote is a quote from him, actually.
Yep.
He's quoting himself while he was interviewing Corey and Woe on his channel about their podcast. And his quote is, "I hope everyone is enjoying the podcast. No one is allowed to admit they listen to." Now, for one thing, that he kind of admits too much, which is, first off, he was enjoying the podcast, because ever since he got the call, and he definitely got the call, that
Oh,
he
yeah.
needed to amend his ways and denounce.
Well, he admitted as much.
Yeah,
That was not even usually when we say somebody got the call, we're talking theoretically. Like we behind the scenes, we believe that this call took place, but he admitted and he said exactly who it was. It was his pastor. Which, real quick, just to go over the timeline, Will Spencer says that he was raised a Reformed Jew. And then he essentially explored all the religions and he went to like 30 different countries and he learned the blade. And
while you were starting a family, he was off warping. Yeah. Don't you feel like you missed out?
Yeah, he was doing Indiana Jones things. And
if
so
only.
So he said that was his journey, right? And then in his bio on his website, it'll say that he came to Christ in 2020 at Burning Man. So he's been a Christian for 5-ish years, right? Depending on which part of 2020 Burning Man takes place in. So he's a baby Christian, as far as I'm concerned. 5 years is like just starting. So he just became a Christian. Before that, he was like in the manosphere, whatever. And he did the thing as people usually do when they convert, even within denominations. They just keep on going and they don't even pause and think about the major change they just had. And they just go for it. So he
often referred to as a cage stage.
Yeah.
Because, you get kind of wild and untamable to the point where people kind of feel like they ought to lock you in a cage. Although I have a private interpretation of that passage as well, which is you start acting like Nicolas Cage. Yeah, there's
there you go.
That kind of wildness as well.
It's just I gotta tell everyone about this right now. Yeah. So, anyways, he read
the Old Testament.
Yeah, he became a Christian in 2020, and then like 6 months ago, up until about 6 months ago, he was on board with what the guys at Stone Choir were doing, to the point where he wanted them on his podcast. And Woe recently recorded it was
about a year ago.
Yeah, it was about like a year. He recently released the recording that they did. He took his own recording because the episode was. We'll get to that. During that recording, which I believe is what you're just referencing, I listened to it this week. Woe only dropped it like a week ago. And Will Spencer in that recording is just 100% on board with what Stone Choir is throwing down, to the point where he's like, I thought you guys were crazy, but then I listened to your podcast and I checked out your Twitter and I did blah, 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 blah. And I realized, oh, you guys are cool. There's nothing wrong with you. And so he defended them.
Well, and the real strange thing about it is when you listen to his interview of them, he says blatantly, hey, people said X, Y, and Z about you. You don't believe X, Y, and Z, so I think you're okay.
Yeah.
And then Corey and Woe say, yeah, we don't believe X, Y, and Z. We actually believe,
whatever,
ABC instead. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Now his shredding of them is just him rehashing and saying, well, they believe X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So,
yeah, and so
it's obviously a lie.
Yeah. So he was on board with them. And then to continue the timeline, he, by his own admission, he was about to upload the episode and he got a call from his pastor. So he went from being he was a Christian for like 4 years. And then he was somewhere in there. He was Q-pill.
I'm not sure if I've lost Sean or if Sean has lost me. Let me pop in here and see what's going on. Well, it looks like we have lost Sean, so I will Well, I'll just kind of pick up where we were at and see if I can't keep going with it. But so anyway, to pick up the thread where Sean left off, Will Spencer got the call from his pastor, said, "Hey, you can't be associated with these people. They're very bad. You need to recant these people." And he did. He came out with a full mea culpa, and let's see, released all of these things saying, "Hey, we're very unhappy. I realized the error of my ways. I've been a bad boy." And ever since that day, he's been releasing his own podcast, talking about what a bad boy he was and how he's so sorry for the things that he's done. But in the meantime, to get back to this headline that was at the header of this article, he says, "I hope everyone is enjoying the podcast that they're not allowed to admit that they like." It seems like his new rejoinder is, "I hope someone is listening to my podcast now that they know they're allowed to like it." He's come full circle. His review of that is, let me see. Let me check on Sean, see if he's able to come back in. But anyhow, he's working his way back in. But so he released this article recently, this one that we've been referencing, The Dangerous Secret. And mostly, and I'll summarize a bit of it for you because you don't need to read the article. But mostly what it is it is an account of his own actions, his own journey through the right, how he became, red-pilled, and how he became, an observer, a noticer. He became a Christian, and he started putting two and two together. But then he had this about face, and he doesn't put it in so many words, but essentially he repented of his repentance. And now he sees the error of his ways, and he blames all of this on fatherlessness. Now, in order to introduce this, I do want to talk just a little bit about what is projection. The name of the show is Fatherless Projection. And he talks about how in our society right now, fatherlessness is a huge issue. But he's got some data to reveal, the baby boomers divorce rate starts going up. It skyrockets. It continues to climb. And, his parents, they stayed married, but, he had a sort of absentee father. He was there, but he wasn't there. And the ramifications of that. And then he goes into some of the religion that he was raised with. He was raised, as we mentioned before, as a Reformed Jew. And for those of you who are not familiar with Judaism, most Jewish people are not particularly religious. And his family was not an outlier in this whatsoever. They did the Rosh Hashanah, they did the Bar Mitzvah, the Yom Kippur, but they didn't have a super religious devotion to what was going on. Sean, good to have you back. Don't know what that was, but
yeah, I'm just gonna apologize real quick. For whatever reason, like the last 2 Sundays, my internet connected. I don't know what's going on with that. I need to run through the cycles or whatever before the show next time. So sorry about that.
Strange stuff. But so he came out of, we're talking about, this article, which is his journey, and came out of this into religiosity, like Sean was saying, at Burning Man, of all places, and kind of fell into the right-wing manosphere. Now, the right-wing manosphere is not explicitly Christian, not even a little bit. As a matter of fact, up until quite recently, it was fairly pagan. A lot of neo-pagan influence, a lot of humanism, a lot of Jewish humanism in there. Just a lot of very strange milieu. Buddhism, even. Let's strive to make the best version of ourselves. But there were a couple things in the manosphere, even as a non-Christian group, largely, that were quite helpful. Not the least of which is the concept of the red pill, the concept of the longhouse. These are things that came out of that. And he has nothing nice to say about that. This here, excuse me, this section here, a digital substitute for dads. It's interesting, but not necessary. But anyway, he starts talking about the red pill. Everybody who's been online knows where it comes from, so you can skip that part. But, this section here, men who enter the manosphere take the red pill, which awakens them to these hidden truths. These are truths that, women, women will marry up, and so they're looking for hypergamous relationships. But the men of the manosphere are trained to grow themselves physically, financially, and with sexual power. The promise is that by shedding beta programming and becoming alphas, they will transform into objects of women's desire. This will activate dormant feminine submission, empowering men to triumph over the feminist spirit of the age. For those of you who are not in the manosphere, who haven't read the manosphere, this will sound very strange. For those of you who have been in those circles, you're going to hear that and say, wow, what an artful way of missing the point. He's found just the very best way to describe something in the very worst terms possible so that everyone will be opposed to it. But, for all of its ills, the manosphere does try and teach people, and this is the way to express it to people who haven't heard this before. Try to be the best version of yourself. If your relationships are failing, you can't fix other people, so fix yourself instead. Now, when put in those terms, it's going to actually be helpful advice. When put in the terms of someone who is opposed to it, who has recently, turned heel and decided that, we want to reject everything that comes out of this corner of the internet, it's going to be very different. So, first off, the red pill movement, the manosphere, while I don't recommend it per se, there are good things that have come out of it. Sean, did you have anything you wanted to say on that section of the article so far?
Yeah, the original red pill movement that came out of the manosphere, obviously it's based on the Matrix, like that's the imagery. But the original from oh my goodness, this might go back 15 years or so, at least. Yeah,
I mean, 10. We're going all the way back to at least 2012. That's where I started running into it.
Yeah, so the original red pill, the idea was about the truth about male-female interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get a lot of the, oh boy, how do I sanitize this? Alpha, alpha engages and beta bucks, we'll say that. But the first word rhymes with bucks. So alpha does not buck, beta does buck. There you go.
Yeah.
But
it's essentially what it is it's a study in women's attitudes. Why do women tick the way they do?
Right. And it was honestly a very black-pilled way of looking at women. Because essentially what you had was, well, women will sleep around, and who they want to sleep with is the guys who are the most fit, and they like being used as objects, and so that's what you have to do. And it kind of said, stop being the good guy, be the bad guy, so that you can sleep with a lot of women. That was the original red pill idea, and there was some truth to it. I'm not going to play it down for people who remember that movement. There is truth to what they're saying. If you're not talking to a godly Christian woman, you're likely running into a woman like this. And we've all seen it, where the woman who has 3 different kids by 4 different dads, or whatever crazy numbers they got going on, I'm ready to find true love. I'm ready
Yeah,
for it to
yeah.
be my
I'm
time.
ready to settle down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's truth to that, but I just wanted to point out that was the original, the red pill movement. So if you ever hear somebody talk more specifically about the red pill, that might be what they're referencing, because for a good period of like probably 10 years, that's all it really meant. It had nothing to do with Jews. It had nothing to do with central banking. It had nothing to do with any of that. It was strictly a male female interaction and how to sleep with a bunch of women. And so we're not in that red pill movement. That's not our
Hmm. Yeah,
our red
and
pill.
movements do evolve and kind of sublimate each other as time goes on. But this movement that came out, started around 2010, but really got big, especially by 2016. Um, it was there was a lot of relationship advice that was being sought out by young men, uh, not necessarily because they didn't have dads, but because their dads didn't know what the heck was going on. Because female behavior had got such to the point where in our society, their bad behavior was rewarded and their good behavior was not rewarded, to where women, for the most part, if she was not raised in a Christian home or at least a very conservative home, uh, her behavior would go unpunished. She would have no consequences for dating lots of different guys, sleeping around in high school, all of these things which are very bad. And so these guys were like, hey, there are no good women. Here I am. I'm an average guy. Let's say I'm a 5 or a 6 on a scale of 10, and I can't get the attention of any girls. So these online gurus, and a lot of them were pickup artists, which are very degenerate. But despite the fact that they might be bad people, they had good advice, which was, hey, fix yourself, turn yourself into a good version, turn yourself into something desirable, and women will desire you.
Yes.
And, desiring for the wrong reasons and with the wrong outcomes. But blind squirrels still find nuts every once in a while. And there was a lot of that going on.
And I what you were saying, I'm gonna bring this up again when we get to my Twitter thread that I'd started today for this episode, because what you're essentially saying is that you have to fix the things that are right, or you have to fix the wrongs in your own life instead of trying to fix the system that you have no control over. Like, do the things that are right in your life. So for the red pill movement, it was go lift weights. That was the big thing. Go lift weights, make a lot of money, do the Andrew Tate thing.
Drive Lamborghinis, and all of a sudden girls will throw themselves at you.
Yeah, so there was, even just the lifting weights thing, like it was always comments, because I used to hang out in those kind of circles because it was big at a time when I was single. I was in the Army at the time, and it was just how people talked, and it was like, oh man, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna be the guy that lifts weights and put pictures of myself with no shirt, looking, extra sexy on the internet and that kind of thing. And like that was the way that it was done back then, and it worked. But that's what I'm saying is, like, it's about fixing things within yourself. But there's a good version of that is where I'm trying to go with that. I was starting to trail, but
there is a baptized version, and that's kind of what started to happen. And Michael Foster was a big moment in this. I know a lot of people, especially in our circles, don't necessarily like everything that he's done. Some of it has been less than the strongest position on certain subjects, but he had a very strong Christian pull on the manosphere influence. Here was this area that was just dominated by pickup artists, people who understood female psychology and utilized it to bad ends. He came along and he baptized it. He said, hey, look, these guys are right in what they're saying about why women act the way they do. And they're right about the ways to treat them, as far as, how to talk to them and how to respect them, but not to adore them like they're goddesses. But you're wrong about what you're trying to do with that knowledge. You're wrong in the way that you are trying to order your life given this newfound wisdom. And so his book, It's Good to Be a Man, and some talks that he did on the there are some manosphere get-togethers that happen every year. Those have been quite excellent. But anyway, to get back to this article, let's see. How do we want to do this? Let's try that. So getting back to the article by excuse me, I can't seem to shake this cough. But Spencer's next section is a breeding ground for extremism, how the red pill movement focuses on specific things. You can read here, a second popular topic. How did we get here as a society? With here being a woman-dominated dystopia of crumbling family, church, and state, often referred to online as trash world. He's poking directly at our favorite 8th century woodchopper there, or the longhouse. Now, the longhouse is a concept that I think we've talked about before on the show, haven't we, Sean?
Possibly. I mean, it's just the idea of women taking over and putting men under their thumb in short. So
there was an early American tribe that the Europeans made contact with, and their society was set up in this longhouse institution, and this longhouse had a den mother, as it were, a woman who was in charge of it, and it was not good. Let me just say, there are a lot of problems that come from having a society with a matriarchal structure, and pointing out that we have gone that direction, and that we have followed in the footsteps of many societies that have failed because of this long housing that has happened in our society. Will Spencer is pointing out that, this is extremism, pointing out that, here is a longhouse. This is a Viking longhouse, so it actually has nothing to do with the people that we are referring to, the Native Americans.
See, and that's what always threw me off about the verbiage of the longhouse, because I would always see pictures of the Viking longhouses, which
we're not like matriarchal at all.
No, they're dining halls where the tribe leader lived in the back. Like it was his house, but everyone hung out in it because it was long and you could put a bunch of tables up and drink mead and eat mushrooms or whatever other things Vikings are doing.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to see what an Iroquois longhouse looked like, let me open this in a new tab and swap to it real quick. This is what actual Iroquois longhouses look like. They were not made out of lumber that was milled. They were made out of thatch and straw and cane poles and things of that sort, because these people were not highly developed. They were highly developed for American Indians, but they were not highly developed as far as compared to Europeans, even Europeans such as Vikings from a century before. But anyway, he brings up 4chan, which had something to do with it. But 4chan was essentially just a Japanese chat website.
4chan is
Twitter before Twitter.
4chan is where I would say I first heard a lot of the red pill ideas.
Yeah, but it was still available on Twitter. You just had to be a little bit more. You had to be a little more cagey and careful about the ways you talked about it. But anyway, so essentially his takeaway of the red pill movement is that it just blames women for all of our problems. He denies the long housing of our society, which is evident. He recants all of the bad things he's ever said about feminism. I may be exaggerating a bit, but essentially he says, these people, the header for that part of the article is, a breeding ground for extremism. He believes that red pill ideology, this idea that we have arrived where we are because of feminism, is extremism. So he has fully turned his back on what he once knew. But anyway, this is the meat of the article. This is the part that I really wanted to talk about, because he titles this section "The Grand Deception," and I just want to read the first couple paragraphs, maybe with a little bit of skipping, just for time's sake. But it is quite revealing, some of the positions that he takes, especially considering some of the things that he has said in the past about, these very subjects, with that interview with Woe and Corey on his show that he didn't release. But let's pick it up here and read for a little bit. And Sean, if you've got anything to say, just cut in, jump in and cut me off. Don't feel bad about it at all. But anyway, the Grand Deception. It's no great revelation to say that Reformed Jewish families like mine are ultra-liberal. But what many do not know is that the post-war consensus, the collection of progressive values imposed by elites in the wake of World War II, is the Jewish equivalent of a homeschool curriculum. Full agreement there. I saw firsthand how following the so-called PWC devastated my family as a microcosm of the wider culture. So, as under a fathered man seeking answers for myself, as an underfathered man seeking answers for myself, I too found the manosphere, the red pill, and 4chan. Here's how I'd summarize what they had to say about how we got here. Please note this is their narrative, not mine. Make sure you're sitting down.
Yeah.
Please sit down. I don't want you to be driving when you hear this. You might crash something. Give me a break. The Jews who killed Christ didn't accept defeat at his resurrection. They spent centuries plotting to overthrow his reign and establish a global seat of power in Jerusalem. Well, they certainly tried that for the first 50 years, didn't they? This scheme surfaced in a pseudo-historical 19th century document called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion.
Now, I do want to insert here real quick.
What do you know about this book, Sean?
When they say, well, first of all, with that first part of the paragraph, when you said, they didn't accept defeat at his resurrection, the Bible says that. We're not telling you that. The Bible says that. The Bible says
they turned around and gave money to the soldiers and said, hey, say that his disciples came and stole his body away. That is the definition of not accepting defeat at his resurrection. Yes.
So that's absurd right off the rip. The protocols of the learned elders.
But just so you know, this is their narrative, not mine.
Right. The protocols of the learned elders of Zion was tweeted out by the CIA or the FBI, one of the 3-letter agencies, on Twitter like a year ago. It was like a huge thing. People were like, yo, they just tweeted out the protocols. Like, this is crazy. But it's an officially recognized document by the U.S. government. I want to say it was the CIA, but I could be wrong about that. It was weird that the CIA would tweet out a document like that to begin with, or any document on just, hey guys, CIA here. Here's an upload for the protocols of the learned elders of Zion.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about it. The only thing I know about the protocols is that there's when I got my Ford Ranger, there was one in the glove box. So
no. So essentially, it is I'm going to very, very flyover summarize this, but it's a plan. I'll basically say, like, the Kalergi plan is like one part of this overarching protocols thing. It's about just undermining society and essentially making history look the way that it has looked for the last 100 or so years. It's one of those things where it's like, well, if this is a fake document, they sure
has been prophetic.
They sure happen to have nailed it. Like, wouldn't it be funny if the Jews did all these things and ran the world and undermined society and we just put this book out there and then the CIA retweeted it it's
so one of the major one of the major criticisms of the book is that it is supposedly not written by a Jewish person, but written by someone who is critical of Jewish behavior, let's say. But if so, it sure does map on nicely into essentially what they've been doing for the last couple hundred years. Very, very, like you said, very prophetic. But anyway, continuing on with this straw man. Let's see. He says the next step is Adolf Hitler read the protocols and became the sole Christian world leader, brave enough to challenge the Jews, which he determined to do for the good of his superior Aryan race. Jewish capitalist forces in the West, led by Roosevelt and Churchill, and Jewish Bolshevik forces in the East, led by Stalin, then conspired to destroy Hitler and the defiant National Socialists of Germany. I am not a Hitler scholar, but I don't think he ever read the protocols.
Yeah, that seems dubious.
I don't think he referenced them at all. I think pretty much his everything that he talks about is Jewish behavior of Jewish communities in Germany and Austria.
He liked Luther. I'm told he liked Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? He was German, and he liked his fathers before him. Shocker.
And he liked Germans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he read those guys and liked them. For the record, I like those guys too. I don't agree with Nietzsche on everything, obviously, as a Christian man, but he's well thought out and worth the read. That's another subject.
He's, I read Nietzsche because I thought, what is, kind of this know thy enemy thing. I wanted to know who is Nietzsche, what does he stand for. So I read a few of his books, but I came away with, wow, he's a clever guy. He's got some good points, but mostly he's just kind of weird. And a lot of his thought was just kind of the result of evolutionary thinking. But
we may have to do a future episode because I actually think there's a lot in Nietzsche that's worth. Anyways, I did want to say this about
he gets into some of the weeds of some things that I think are not necessarily helpful. But
sure. I wanted to talk about,
if you're into that.
I wanted to talk about the implied scare quotes of his superior Aryan race, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did this for the good of his superior Aryan race. Let me tell you something, everyone who wants to put superior Aryan race in scare quotes. Adolf Hitler threw off the shackles that had been put on his people and turned Germany from for all intents and purposes, a third world country after the First World War, and turned it into the powerhouse of continental Europe. And we're talking within a 12-year, less than that, because it was like 12 years that the entire Nazi party reigned in Germany. But he turned it around, made him a powerhouse. And the only way that he was able to be stopped is that the collective will of every other Aryan nation around the world came together to defeat him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it took. All this idea of like, oh, well, if it was a superior Aryan race, then they should have won that war. They had to fight against every other Aryan nation in the world.
And almost won.
Yes. And another thing, when we talk about the Olympics that were held in Germany during Hitler's reign, everyone likes to say, oh, Jesse Owens went and, black guy goes into Germany and wins a race, right? Well, you know who won the vast majority of the gold medals at that Olympics? Germany.
The Germans.
Germany won the vast majority, not America. Germany cleaned house during those Olympics.
And what's more, Jesse Owens, the American who actually won gold, black guy, was treated well by the Germans, and the Germans loved him, and the Americans hated him and stole his shoes because they hated the fact that they were being represented by a black guy on the national stage. Jesse Owens, to his dying day, had a picture of Adolf Hitler that he kept in his wallet. because he said he went to Germany and this was the only guy who treated him like a human being.
Yep.
So,
Anyways,
so much for this guy who's
enough about the supposed superiority of the Aryan race, Mr. Guy of dubious descent.
But anyway, he says Jewish capitalist forces in the West, led by Roosevelt and Churchill, and Jewish Bolshevik forces in the East, led by Stalin, conspired to destroy Hitler and defiant National Socialists of Germany. If you are a student of history, you cannot deny the fact that the forces in the East, led by Stalin, were Jewish.
Yeah.
The USSR was a Jewish institution. And the idea that the capitalist Jews in New York had something to do with the war is actually not untrue. It wasn't everything. They didn't start the war, but they certainly had something to do with its proliferation. But anyway, getting on. In 1945, the Allies were victorious, and shortly after, the Holocaust was fabricated. Mind you, these are things that Spencer has said himself about the Holocaust. I don't know what evidence he has seen to make him change his mind, but I'd be very interested in that. This ersatz atrocity served as the keystone for the never again ethos of the post-war consensus. Horrific tales of mass murder in the death camp stabbed like a knife into the heart of the West. Movies and TV shows made by Jews slandered masculine Christian patriarchy as the foundations of fascism and genocide.
So whether or not the Holocaust actually happened, everything else in that paragraph did happen.
Plainly so.
Plainly so.
Yeah, uncontroversially so. The people who run Hollywood talk about this openly. Mm-hmm. And then it says the moral vacuum left behind after patriarchy's demise. Jewish liberal progressive values ascended without resistance. The Jews chose feminism as the chief instrument to mobilize those values, playing on the feminine sympathy for the disadvantaged. A weaponized empathy campaign began in the 1960s to enlist marginalized populations in the democratic process. Deviant homosexuals, promiscuous single women, unassimilated immigrants, and violent inner-city minorities. Sean, aren't you glad that is not true?
Yeah, I mean, if it was true that deviant homosexuals were being enlisted, it would be like we had a designated month to parade their naked buttocks around in front of children in our town squares. But thanks be to God that never happened.
Anyway,
this is a
video
great video
posted without comment.
I'm Jewish and proud because Jews have always done what's right. We've led the fight for gay rights. Harvey Milk fought to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation. Eddie Windsor was a leader in the fight for marriage equality. Miriam Ben Shalom challenged the ban on gay people serving in the military. We've helped lead the fight for racial justice. Our rabbis were BFFs with MLK. Together with black leaders, Jews helped to establish over 20 HBCUs. During the civil rights movement, Jews were disproportionately involved in the protests. We've led the fight for women's rights, for equal pay and the right to choose, and against discrimination in the workplace. Jews were also among the first on the ground in Turkey, Ukraine, and Haiti. In Judaism, when it comes to helping others, no action is too big or too small. The Jewish principle of Tikkun Olam tells us that we have the power to change the world, and there are so many ways to do that. And this is why I am Jewish and proud.
Please note that was posted as a positive endorsement. It's like the scene in The Big Short where he's like, why is this guy
why is he bragging about this?
Well, he said no, it was like, why is he confessing all this? He's like, he's not, he's bragging.
Yeah.
That's that video right there.
Yeah. So anyway, you can either believe right-wing Anons on Twitter, red pill Anons who are purportedly fatherless and familyless and just devoid of all sort of, any moral character. And you can agree with them and the Jews who say what they're doing. Or you can agree with people who say that the Jews are lying about what they're doing and are not actually promoting open border immigration, abortion, sodomy, and all of the things that have led to the destruction of our society today, who are you going to believe? There's a quote, I don't remember originally who it's from, but it has served me well, which is when your enemy tells you who he is, believe him. Mm-hmm. When these people come out and they say, we are doing this to destroy your society, believe them. When Will Spencer comes out and says, no, it's all a lie, no, it's just extremism, why would you want to believe him? It might be comforting to think, oh, well, these people don't actually mean harm. These people aren't actually trying to destroy our society. But guys, they said it. They said that that's their purpose. They said that they're the people who have promoted homosexuality. They're the people who have promoted feminism. The woman who convinced American women to stop covering their heads in church was not a Christian. She was Jewish. And she had a program out against head coverings in church. The woman, Margaret Sanger, who made abortion legal in the United States, who founded Planned Parenthood, was a Jewish woman. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, Jewish individuals came out and said, this is a violation of our religious freedom.
Yep.
Which means that they cannot practice their religion without murdering babies. That is what they are admitting by saying that. So anyway, that was my big takeaway from this article is we're going to admit all of these things that are believed by the right wing. Then we're going to call you fatherless. We're going to call you a bunch of wolves in sheep's clothing. We're going to say how bad you are. I did want to touch on this fatherlessness just a little bit, because while we were doing that, we kind of got disconnected, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that in particular. But what is it with this idea of fatherlessness in the right wing? He talks about the fatherlessness and how Doug Wilson refers to father hunger, which, by the way, I have that book. I think it's right behind me here. Yeah. Doug Wilson, not a big fan of us, not a big fan of people like us, but I actually recommend this book. I have read it. I liked it. Had some good things to say. And some of the things that have been brought about in our society are because we have a fatherlessness problem. But the solution to this is not to berate young men who are married and productively employed, who are being fathers to their own children, who are discovering the truth that has been largely held out of our reach by the generations that came before us. The solution is not to berate the men who are being fathers to their children, who have had who have grown up fatherless and had to suffer through that, but came out the other side successful. The solution to that is actually to teach them how to be fathers, which this book does. This article does not.
Yeah, this line right here to me is hilarious. Like, Will Spencer really thought he cooked with this one. Doug Wilson calls the phenomenon father hunger, but I respectfully disagree. Our nation suffers from father famine. Yeah, fool. That's what a famine is, fool. It's where people are really hungry and they don't have food, idiot.
Has it occurred to you that widespread hunger is typically referred to as famine?
Yeah. As if what Doug Wilson is saying is that there's fathers in the refrigerator, but people are just not getting up to go get them out. Shut up, Will Spencer. That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was sitting at my computer, typing away at my job, and I thought, you know what? I'm just a bit peckish for some fatherhood right now, but I was too lazy to get out of my chair and go get it. No.
I will say this other thing, and I want to get back to what I was saying before I got cut off by my before somebody, whoever they were, cut off my internet. Yeah. He says, we're having a father famine, right? Well, I was once, this is him speaking, not me. I was one such young man. My parents stayed married until I left home to attend Stanford University. Ooh. Did you study the blade at Stanford University?
Did I mention I went to Stanford?
Yeah. But sadly, their union was an unhappy one, in part because my mother was hooked on prescription pills and addiction that would later claim her life. I was also raised a Jew, blah, blah, blah. So his whole thing is, it's awful. We have this father famine, and I was one such young man. And then he turns around, and so are these Anons who are, believe everything I believed until less than a year ago, and I was talking about on my podcast and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. My story isn't unique. In fact, it's comparatively mild. Yeah. What happened next isn't unique either. I turned to the internet.
So this is
and
all
then
projection.
This happened. ... Please click the link.
Yeah. So this is all projection, because like we had said, his journey was doing all this crazy stuff that he very in a very cringy manner talked about in a thread on Twitter, which is just hilarious. I hope we have screen caps of that, where he's like, I'm the closest thing to Indiana Jones you've ever seen, and I went to China and I studied the blade, and he's got like a picture of himself with the sword. Woo, I'm studying the blade. And so yeah, he got roasted for that, obviously. But anyways, he
well deserved.
Yeah, that was his whole thing. And then at Burning Man, he found Christ, which is already a little suspicious to me. Was there a pastor there who shared the gospel with you? Or, you know what I mean? Was there like this Christian man who's a missionary to Burning Man? Or I'd love to hear the story there.
That is possible.
It's possible.
It is possible.
Or was the story, bro, I was tripping on shrooms and I looked at the burning effigy and I saw Jesus talking to me? Like what's the whole story there? Like, we need to hear some details on that one, because it's fairly suspect. But anyways, about 5 years ago, he became a Christian. So as we said, he's already a baby Christian. And then at some point, he turned to the internet, and the internet made him this radical right-wing guy, which he wasn't. But he and then
I mean, even in his interview with Corey and Woe, there were several times where he said things that was like, I don't think you quite get it. I don't think you're quite there, man. That's a little inconsistent.
But then about a year ago, in the course of one phone call, he flipped the switch, and now he's the expert on Christian masculinity. He's the expert on what the right wing believes. Right? He's an expert on the fatherlessness that makes them all there. And the other big development that was shared in this article is apparently he's engaged to be married now, which, congratulations, that's great. But Will Spencer,
maybe stop giving relationship advice until you've been married for a little while. Don't
come at me. He says in the article he's in his mid-40s, right? You threw away your youth so that you could study the blade. And we keep saying that because that was like his bragging.
He literally posted that.
Yes. So while you were receiving the means of grace for the last 20 years.
His post directly. While you were starting a family, I was traveling the world and studying the blade.
Yeah. So congratulations, bro.
I got news for you, Spencer. When I was young, I traveled the world and raised a family.
Yeah.
And I also practice HEMA. So I can sword fight too.
Ooh.
I am not impressed.
Yeah.
You wasted your youth to go talk to Shaolin monks.
Yeah.
When I was married with a kid, talking to Buddhist monks.
Right.
But instead of studying the blade and trying to divine their insights, I was actually bringing the gospel to them.
Yeah. If I was to try to do the bragging thing, right? Like I was I was baptized on Super Bowl Sunday in 2003. All right. The Raiders were in the Super Bowl the last time, or that was the last time when I was baptized. Right. Like this was a long time ago. Rich Gannon was the quarterback of the Raiders. So this is 22 years, I think it was this year. So that's how long I've been a Christian. Right. I've been married 11 years as of very recently. And well, I guess not. Well, it's June. Yeah. So since last month, I've got 2 kids. I'm, I didn't go travel the world. I happen to be, this isn't part of my like bragging thing, but I happen to be a brown belt in Shoshu, which is a Chinese martial art. Yeah,
Never heard of it.
I've never talked about it. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm not like crapping on doing martial arts, but yeah, I happen to have also done that for a number of years. Did the was thing. Was in the army.
Went to Afghanistan.
Yeah, went to Afghanistan. Saw Afghanistan from a turret, which is an insane experience. So like
there are
all these
more
things,
comfortable and less warm places to stand than a turret in Afghanistan, but
yeah. So
the chimney for the Humvee.
Yeah. So all that to say, I've been a Christian like over 4 times as long as he has been. He's not even married. I've been married a decade. He's got no kids. And he hasn't done anything half as cool as being in the military. He just went backpacking like a recent high school graduate who's got too much time on his hands, and he got too much money at his bar mitzvah and wanted to go blow it all in Europe and China and whatever. So all that to say, Will Spencer has no business talking about this. He's not that guy. I don't know why. First of all, I don't know why he tried to prop himself up as this guy. Second of all, I don't know why Doug Wilson thinks that he's that guy. That is ridiculous to me. Will Spencer has done nothing with his life other than be online and talk about doing things with his life. As far as like things that relate to masculinity or Christianity.
And it takes more than pictures of you in a leather jacket and a motorcycle to make you masculine. And if that's all it took, I'd be famous.
Yeah.
I have leather jackets and a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So surely I'm the masculinity guy now then, huh?
Well, and that's what really upsets me about this article is everything that he describes in that is Will Spencer, right? He's in his mid 40s and he's just now getting engaged. Could have been engaged 20 years ago easily.
Yeah.
Right. That's when I got married, was mid 20s ish. I think I might have been 20. Oh boy, I could do some math. I think it was 24.
Yeah.
And the only reason it took that long was because I had a 4-year contract in the Army that pushed my timeline way back. But
I got married at 21 and I'll be 31 this year. I will have been married for 10 years this year. And I have child number 5 on the way. Due date impending.
That's awesome.
So, when it comes to criticizing people for being fatherless, and maybe one of the things you should look at is if those people are fathers, and if they are, how they are being a father to their children.
Yeah.
Because criticizing someone for not having a father, there are going to be consequences for that. Read the book Father Hunger. Read Michael Foster's book, It's Good to Be a Man. He talks about clueless bastards, men who are raised without fathers, and how they, a lot of ways, have to grope in the dark. But at the end of it, they're not criticizing you for being fatherless. The purpose of those books is to teach you to be the father that you never had.
Yep.
And as a man who had a wonderful father, I had an excellent dad. But he was in the Army and he was deployed for half of my childhood. It was kind of off and on. When he was home, things were great. When he wasn't home, things weren't great. But these books were great for me, someone who didn't really suffer the way a lot of people do. So I highly recommend those two books, Father Hunger, Doug Wilson, It's Good to Be a Man, Michael Foster, despite the fact that they're going to have big issues with things that we have said in this show tonight. Both of those men will be highly critical of things that we have said tonight. But Will Spencer's article here, I've said it before and I'll say it again. He's telling on himself.
Yep.
He's telling you what his deep-seated insecurities are. He's telling you why he pursued the right, and he did it for the wrong reasons. But the thing is, what you win them with is what you win them to. He came to the right in these radical positions because he wanted to be accepted and he wanted to seem like an outsider. He found his clique of people where he can be accepted and be seen as an outsider. And that's what he got, and he got what he wanted, so he's happy now. The problem is, it's not real.
Yeah.
You found some things that you could say that you thought were risque and racy, and you said them, and then other people came along and said you can't say that, and you bowed the knee. The mark of a true man, he that sweareth to his own hurt and changeth not. Someone who says something that they believe that is controversial and unpopular, and then when he comes under fire, he doesn't buckle under pressure. That is not what Will Spencer is or was.
Yeah, he's also a backstabber, which is why Woe used the picture that he did when he uploaded the 6-hour raw audio of them talking.
Which was very raw. There were a couple spots in the middle where, it was like 3 to 5 minutes, so it was just silence.
Yeah. Worth listening to, though.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's pretty wild that it honestly is pretty good content.
It is. It's excellent. For 6 hours, for a guy to go for 6 hours is actually quite admirable.
Yeah.
And for it to not really get boring at any point.
Corey and Woe are their podcast is good, but also like them being interviewed is very good. So it was cool to see them on the other side of the table, even though it ended up being with a backstabbing person,
a traitor, a faithless friend.
Yeah, a real Judas, if you will.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right. Well,
let's put forth the positive.
Yeah, we want to make a positive case for what we, what is it that we want to bring forward? I mean, the name of the podcast that we do every week is for future generations. What is the positive case for us and our posterity? But before we get into that, I think we should hit the chats, see what's up, and converse a little bit. Let's see. We got Chris Hookins says, "Nice. Good evening, gents. Good evenings, Mr. Hookins. Good to see you. Been a while." The other Paul says, "Hi, lads. Good to see you, Paul." Other Paul says, "Will spends your shekels." Is that his last name? Spends your shekels.
Yep. There you go. Mm-hmm. I thought his
John Carter. Go ahead.
I thought his last name was Conehead.
Conehead. John Carter says FDR was the real racist.
Yeah.
Well,
he has his moments.
You don't like FDR because he was a racist, and I don't like FDR because he got us into World War II. We are not the same.
He wasn't racist enough.
Wise Path Books says, "Good evening. Good evening, Wise Path Books. By the way, if you are looking for good books, especially good children's books, look at Wise Path Books. They are an excellent distributor, especially of George MacDonald. I don't know if I have repped these before, but I will do it again because I think they are gorgeous. But I got these books from Wise Path Books. If you have never read The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald and The Princess and Curdie by George MacDonald, They are fantastic books to read to your kids, especially if you've got kids who you're trying to introduce to stories, and let's say they're a little bit shy or a little bit hesitant because they're scared of scary stuff. This is a great intro. The artwork is gorgeous. They're leather bound, shiny. I love it. As a book lover who loves to read books to my kids, look these up.
Hey, did you upload the, I guess, image macro that I made for future generations?
I did not pull that in.
Okay.
Let me do that real quick. Can you read the chats while I do that?
Yeah. Who else we got? Reformed Rogue says, good evening. Good evening yourself, sir. Dindinger here says, evening lads. And
lads. Evening lads.
Evening to you. So I can get started on while you're looking that up.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down 6 points that I thought would be good as kind of the positive, the positive vision. I'm a visionary, if you will, a real vision caster, and I wanted to put this forth because if the whole article is saying like this is what the new he specifically uses the new Christian right, and I particularly like that title. I think it summarizes our guys in a pretty good way, because we're definitely not the boomer Christian right. We're not the Ronald Reagan Christian right. We're the new guys looking at the old ways, and I think that new Christian right works well. It doesn't say things like dissident or, you know what I mean? It doesn't set us up as the bad guys, right? So I think I like it personally. So I might just run with it. I might just write the case for the new Christian right. But anyways, I wanted to put forth something. I came up with 6 points. I asked Jeff to add to it, and he did not. So
I actually whittled it down to 5.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
But,
we'll have to talk about the one missing, but I'll start with my. So the first one, the first point that I wanted to put forward that I felt was the most important is regular church attendance. So with that is implied being a true Christian, right? Like doing everything from the heart, like actually believing these things, not just like faking it till you make it type thing. Though that would be, I mean, if you just can't find faith, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah. So there are 2 things that you should do if you find yourself lacking faith. First off, the scripture says, if any of you lacks faith, let him pray to the Father.
Yep.
Okay. If you lack faith, pray. Your prayers will sometimes feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. You need to pray anyway. You need to say, God, I know you're out there. I know you can hear me. Please give me faith. And that's a very important part. Fake it till you make it is good advice. There's a small anecdote that I think is very helpful for Christians and also for married couples. There was this young lady. Well, she wasn't young, but she wasn't quite middle-aged either. There was this lady going to a marriage counselor. Her marriage is falling apart. She's just not happy in her marriage. She says to this marriage counselor, hey, I don't know what happened to the man that I fell in love with. And this marriage counselor, unlike many marriage counselors, actually gave her good advice and said, well, what you need to do is start thinking about the things that originally made you fall in love with him. Because, you've been married for like 4 or 5 years now. He hasn't changed that much. The things that you loved about him are still true. You're just not thinking about them anymore. And as a small aside here, there's an idea in the book Wild at Heart, which is an excellent book for young men, where a guy, the author, although I'm blanking on his name right now, he talks about the missing tile syndrome when he was dating. The different girls that he would be dating, the only thing he could focus on was the one thing that was missing. Kind of like if you walk into a room and there's a roof or a ceiling tile missing, the only thing you notice about the room is the missing tile. Well, when you get married to someone, it can be easy to start focusing on that one thing that's missing. You fell in love, you got married, but now there's that one thing that's not quite right, and you're just focusing on that. So this marriage counselor told this lady, think about the things that originally made you fall in love with this man. And so she left, went on a trip, summer vacation, came back. It's now autumn. Goes to this marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor asks her, "Hey, how's it going with your marriage? I heard, last time we talked, things weren't going very well." And she says, "No, things are great. We're very happy in our relationship. Our marriage has never been stronger." So never underestimate gratitude and focusing on those things that, first led you into the faith. If you are struggling with faith, ask God for faith, but focus on the little things. Focus on the fact that that there is a Christ who died for your sins. Just reach out in faith, believing, and God the Father will provide you with that faith. Did you have more to say on that specifically, Sean?
Regular church attendance is, I say it that way because it's not enough to just say, like, for instance, I have right in here the Lutheran service book, right? So I personally picked it up because I wanted to do matins and vespers, which, if you don't know, are the morning and evening. Essentially, it's like going through a divine service without taking communion, or you can add the hymns, you can add the readings, you can add all kinds of stuff. But it's a nice way to start and end the day. But within that is also every divine service setting. So if I really wanted to, I could sit there and do everything I did this morning from the same book that I would have been holding this morning. Mm-hmm. And, I could watch a sermon online. I could do all that kind of stuff. But actually, the regular church attendance will change you for the better. Being around the people of God, singing with the people of God, hearing the word live instead of just through, I don't know what it is, but there's something about that. Instead of like hearing it through an electronic device, like while you're mowing the lawn or whatever you're doing, It's just different. You're sitting there in the pew. And it leads into some other things I'm going to say. But number two.
Well, before we get on to number two, for my point one, I kind of combined be Christian and go to church.
Yeah.
I wanted to emphasize, if you are a Christian and you are not going to church, you are living in disobedience.
Yes.
Because the scripture says not to forsake the gathering of the saints. It really is that straightforward. If you are a Christian, you go to church. If you do not go to church, you are either not a Christian or you are a Christian who is living in sin.
Yep.
And I don't want to understate that. That is a sin to not go to church.
And also the positive case for that is that the church is where you go to receive the means of grace. Mm-hmm. So if you wish to have God's grace bestowed onto you, go to church.
In an extra special way.
Yeah.
I mean, God's grace is put on you every time you open your eyes in the morning. But it is put on you in a special way when you go and partake in the sacraments at church.
Right.
All right. Number two. Your number two and number three I have combined.
Ooh. Yeah, I can see why you did that. Marry as young as possible. Jeff is definitely more of a role model in that regard. In fact, I believe, and I know you believe this as well, that your arranged marriage situation is ideal. I hope to find something similar like that for my children, which it can feel kind of weird if you're not used to that kind of thinking, because you end up like, you're looking at church like, okay, this person's kid is this age, like compared to my kid is this age. Like you're already trying to like match make like people's like
It's actually kind of
children.
fun.
Yeah.
Once you get past the weirdness of it, it's a little fun to be like, oh, we just met so-and-so and oh, his daughter's the same age as our son.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes in 12 years.
Yeah.
Not serious, but just kind of fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it would be convenient if that all worked out.
Well,
that way.
Full disclosure, I am in an arranged marriage. I was a missionary to India before I got married, so I was able to get over the weirdness of it.
That's true.
But I highly recommend it, and I plan on marrying my children off to my friends' children because I think that alliances need to be made. It's like that old meme, right? My girlfriend told me to treat her like a princess, so I married her off to the Prince of Lithuania to reinforce my northern border with Lithuania. It's like, hey, alliance. Marrying your children off does create alliances, and in the new Christian right going forward, those alliances will need to be made. I mean, we've seen some of those alliances already with people meeting in chat rooms, turning that into in real life friendships. And so this is just another way of, looking to the future. Who do you want to have grandkids with? The first question in life was, who do you want to have kids with? The next one is, who do you want to have grandkids with? Because if you can't stand the other grandparents, you're not going to be very powerful in your grandkids' life. There was a verse that I wanted to quote, and I accidentally exited the program, and I can't find it now. But I'll just quote as much of it as I can from memory. But God, when talking about marriage, he says, for what reason did we bring this forth, or what reason did God have to bring this to pass? And it was for the purpose of raising a godly offspring. The purpose of marriage is children. If you're dating or courting a girl and she says she doesn't want to have children, or she wants to have one or two kids, run.
Yep.
Run. Extricate yourself from that situation, because it is not good.
And if she tries to chase you, give her a swift kick, and it's self-defense, I swear.
Yeah. First off, it's a woman's natural inclination to have children. And a girl who has rejected that for herself is either someone who is degenerate, which is a thing, or it's a girl who has been brainwashed. Both of those people can be saved and redeemed, but you don't have to be the guy to do it. All right. Find yourself a good girl, go to church, find a girl who wants to have kids, find a girl who doesn't want to go to college, or if she's in college, wants to get out of college, and, get that girl and put a ring on her finger and put a baby in her.
I'm going to, in that order, please.
In that order.
Yeah.
In that order.
I'll put what you just said in a way that it was said as I was growing up, is don't be Captain Save a Hoe.
Correct.
You don't got to be that guy, guys. On that note again, something that I was thinking about today, try your hardest, I guess, to not be the guy who's going to play stepdaddy. Don't do that, guys. In so much as it depends on you, don't be that guy. Come on, have your own kids. I understand there's crazy things that happen. Maybe it's a woman who's, she married young and she had this kid with this guy, and then he got shipped off to Afghanistan. He died in the war heroically, and he posthumously got the Medal of Honor. And you're like, you know what? I really love this woman. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's a very different thing.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not the same person that I was 2 years ago in high school when I had this child with this guy. Don't be that guy, guys. Do your best to not be that guy. That's a nickel's worth of free advice for you. But you are now getting into what I said is number 3. Because I believe these are, I understand why you combined them, but these are 2 different pillars of what I believe the new Christian right should be based on. And that is have as many, I worded it this way on purpose, have as many kids as possible. I understand that for some people there are extraneous circumstances. I am more or less in one of those extraneous circumstances. We have had issues with the 2 children that we've had, and I'm saying my wife and I, not me and Jeff, and we just kind of we've kind of put off having another kid. For that, we're trying to like find out, like, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with her? Like, what's going on?
Did you just get bad dice both times?
Yeah, we don't know what's going. So we're very, very cautious. So there are, I understand there's times where crazy stuff shows up in the gene pool, and you're just like, well, I got to make sure that this crazy thing ain't popping off. But that's why I say as many as possible. And we do plan on having more. I'm just saying, like, there's a reason that I have not hit Jeff numbers yet. But yeah, I have a bunch of kids. Having 3 kids is not a large family, guys. I come from a family of 3 kids. My wife comes from a family of 3 kids. Those aren't big families, guys. I know that we in modern America, we try to say that that's a large family, but it's really not. I would say a large family starts at about maybe 6 kids, but that's not excessive. Like, we just have crazy numbers for.
Yeah. So I come from a family of 4.
Yeah.
And when I was a young kid, we lived in Germany, and 4 was considered an astonishingly large family. 3 was considered large. 2 was considered excessive. 1 was considered the norm. These days, not even 1.
Yeah.
If you have a child, that is extreme.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, that was done intentionally through propaganda to the German people. They have been bullied into believing that it is evil to have children. And that is why they do not. And if you want to know who did that, reference the video earlier in this show.
Yeah. Will Spencer.
So, well, not Will Spencer himself, but his cousins.
All 4 of his grandparents.
My cousins, actually. And, but 4 was considered large, and then we came to the United States, and we're a homeschool family. We started mixing with these other homeschool families, and it seemed like 6 was kind of more normal.
Yeah.
And 8 was large, and 12 was excessive.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see how the thing shifted. When you got just a little bit of perspective. We used to think, 4 is a lot. And then we're around these other families, and 4 is not a lot. And I've got to say, as someone who has 4 kids and number 5 on the way, 4 is not a lot. I say you don't start hitting a lot numbers till about 6. 4 is a very comfortable family size. 3 is replacement. If you and your wife have 3 children, you have only replaced yourself. 4 is only starting to conquer. You are only starting to make good progress towards subduing the earth, which is a command from God, by the way. Have children, subdue the earth. And you're only going to start exceeding that once you get up to about 5 and 6. Now, I don't plan on stopping. I don't plan on stopping. My wife doesn't plan on stopping. We're going to have as many children as God can give us. And unless something happens, if I get a spinal injury and suddenly I'm not able to walk, if my wife's health plummets, something like that. There are reasons to limit, but there are godly ways to do that, and there are ungodly ways to do that as well. But that's a topic for another day. All right, your next point.
Next point.
Now, this is sort of a two-parter, and I want to emphasize that this is 2 parts.
Okay.
Unless I got my numbers different than yours.
No, I think I see why you say that. I have number 4 as instill Christian and Western values in your children.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could have just said instill your values in your children, but I did want to distinctly say that there are the Christian values that even the left wing of the church would say, oh yeah, totally instill those values for sure. But there are also Western values that are built upon those Christian values that are not necessarily biblical, but they are distinct to our people and they should be carried on. So that's why I worded it that way. Instill Christian and Western values in your children. So all these first or 2, 3, and 4 really all build on each other. Marry young, have a bunch of kids. You can't have a bunch of kids if you're Will Spencer and you start at 45, unless
depending on who you marry.
It depends how young she is. If he
snatched up some 18-year-old bride, he could definitely keep going into his 70s.
Yeah. Well, if she's 18, that's doing better than a lot of his kinfolk. So, just leave it at that. Yeah. Eyebrows. But anyways, instill these values in your children. So biblical Christian values, pretty straightforward. There's many catechisms you could use. When my kids are old enough to really, first of all, my oldest has autism, so we're not 100% sure what all she picks up when we talk to her anyways. And my youngest, the boy, I'm just now kind of starting to talk with him. He's 2 years old. So I'm also kind of like, are you getting this? I don't know if you even understand when I say no. Like,
yeah,
how much of this are you picking up? So anyways.
One thing about little kids that I'll say is someone gave me this advice, and we've done it with our kids, and it has worked phenomenally, which is talk to your children as though they are adults. Explain concepts to them that they won't understand. And they won't get it the first time around. But what'll happen is the second or third time around, they'll pick it up much more quickly because they've heard it before. Repetition is the mother of memory. All right. And when you're training children, repetition is key. And also it will flabbergast you, the things that they do pick up. There will be simple things that you think, oh man, everybody knows that. And your kid just doesn't seem to get it. And then there will be something like classifications of insect families that your kid just like out of the blue seems to know. And you're like, how do you know that? And they say, well, that one time you said it to me. And you're like, that was a year ago. You were 2 years old. How are you, you were 3 years old. How are you remembering that? So teach your children. Don't be afraid to teach your children some of the more complex things. And they won't get it the first time around, but it'll be okay. And you will be surprised by the things that they do get. It'll be very fun.
As far as Western values.
Well, this is where I wanted to make a distinction. Because there is a difference between Western values and Christian values. So Christian values, you can go to the fruit of the Spirit, obviously. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, self-control, right?
Gentleness.
And gentleness. Yeah, I missed that one. Those are Christian values. Those should be universal, right? But then, and then there's also, things like honor your father and your mother, respect the elderly. Those things are Christian values. Those things should be universal in every Christian society. But there are some values that are specifically Western that are not necessarily universal. one of which is punctuality. All right. Y'all, I'm sure, saw the meme going around. There was an article maybe a year or two ago that said being on time is racist. Demanding that your workers show up on time is racist. And a woman sued her employer for demanding that she be on time and won because she was black. And it's racist to expect a black person to be on time. Here's the thing. That is a Western virtue. Easterners, as in the Far East, Japanese, Koreans, are also very punctual. Mainland Asians are not. Chinese, who are also very high IQ and very productive, not necessarily timely. Indians, no concept of being on time at all, the subcontinent of India. Southeast Asia, very laissez-faire when it comes to showing up at a party. The Philippines, my aunt is Filipina. Nothing starts on time that she's in charge of. And it's not because she's not a Christian. It's because she's not a Westerner. It's because she's not a European. Now, the thing is, I am a European and my children are European. So I should teach them European virtues that are unique to Europe. There are some things like that. The Prussian, my family are Prussians. Prussians are very militaristic. I play with swords with my son. I shoot guns, Nerf guns with my kids. I have airsoft guns. I play Age of Empires with my boy in my lap, and I teach him all the different units and what they do. I am radicalizing my son to militarism at a very young age. If you're some Mongolian shepherd, you probably don't value that. And that's okay. That is a virtue that is kind of unique to a people group in a particular way. If you're, from Kazakhstan, you're probably not teaching your son how to play Hearts of Iron 4. It's a very unique kind of thing. But I want to raise my children in that tradition because it's part of who they are and where they came from.
A lot of when it comes to our Western virtues and traditions, is a matter of loving your neighbor. And a lot of people don't understand that when it comes to immigration, because they'll have this idea of like, well, as long as they come here legally. Mm-hmm. Well, there is a such thing as an incompatible neighbor, right? Every one of my neighbors doesn't need to be testing my patience, right? They don't all have to be building me up in the virtues of patience and long suffering, right? Some of my neighbors can just be people who live the way that I would like to live. And a lot of what it comes down to, like you were saying with punctuality, a lot of that is just good manners. It's a matter of loving your neighbor. I understand that your people, whoever that is, don't do things that way, but my people do things that way. And so I would like to raise my kids to do things the way that I like to do them and the way that my people as a whole like to do them. I would say you could say that, stealing is against Christian virtues, but mm-hmm. I would also say that within Western, traditionally Western virtues is there's a trust aspect. And I don't know if I have the right words for it, but you shouldn't have to lock your front door.
Yeah, being in a high trust society.
Yeah, you hear you hear like even country songs where it's like, where I come from, we don't lock our front doors and we mm-hmm. never will. And what song is that I'm thinking of? My Town by, yeah, that's who it is. That's the name of the song. But anyways, it's other things. Like I remember seeing a video where it was probably in like LA or something like that, and it was like a Chinese food restaurant, and the Asian guy, whatever kind of Asian food it was, the Asian guy gave his black customer the food through like a plexiglass thing. That's why I think it's like LA or Compton or something like that, because that blows my mind that you would go into a restaurant and that's how you would trade food. Like, that's how much you trust the people eating your food. But anyways,
I saw a video that I think was somewhere in New York where the guy literally, same thing that you're talking about. Like, he's got plexiglass, he's got a small hole just big enough to put the food out and receive the money in. And the guy made the mistake of putting the food out before he received the cash.
That's the video. So that's the video I'm thinking of. Yeah, but the black guy's the one recording it. Like, and he's
bragging about it. He thinks it's funny. Yeah. You idiot! You gave me the food before I gave you the money. Ha ha.
Yeah, and the Asian guy's just, I mean, fatigued,
devastated,
to say the least. Yeah. And but that's what I'm talking about, like that. So we could say, well, that's just Christian virtues. Well, I mean, there's an on top of it aspect of not stealing. There's trusting the guy, trusting your neighbor. You could say to a fault, but if you live in a high trust society, which would be, I mean, it's also the it's the thing about the guy walking around in Denmark and with a little kid, and the little kid says, "Hey, do you know who that is?" He's like, "No." He said, "Well, that's the king of Denmark." And the stranger is like, "Well, where's his bodyguards?" And the kid says, "All of Denmark is his bodyguards." Well, that's a very high trust society. That's there's a loyalty there. There's an idea of there's a I mean, it's patriotism if you actually take it like etymologically. It's a love for it's a love for the fatherland. Yeah. And the king of the head father, the patriarch of your land is the king.
The nation.
Yeah. So I mean, there's virtues on top of just regular Christian values that you should be teaching your kids. Things like holding the door open for a woman. That's not a Christian thing, right? Like, there's nothing inherently like Jesus wasn't
women know how to open doors.
Yeah. But we like to do that.
Teaching your kids how to merge in traffic.
That'd be nice.
Some countries zipper merge, some do not.
Yeah.
And that is not a Christian principle. When it comes to, navigating traffic in public, whether that's foot traffic or car traffic, different countries do it differently. If you go to Mediterranean nations, they will honk it a lot. They will honk when they're pulling out. They will honk when you're pulling out. If you go to Germany and you honk, people will be angry with you because you only honk in order to voice displeasure. You don't honk to say, "Hi, hey, pay attention to me, don't run over me." You honk to say, "Hey, you almost hit me, you dadgum idiot." So those are things that you teach your children, how to navigate the society in which they live, that are not virtue per se, but that it will serve them well to understand these things. And so that's why I wanted to make a distinction between Western virtues and Christian virtues, because they are two distinct things, but they are both very important.
Yep. On to my number 5. Financially strive to have your children start well. So note that I did not say strive to be financially well yourself, though that is good. But the goal would be to set your children up. And this is going to go into something, I guess, when we're done with the list that I had made, and Jeff seems to have liked it. We can go to that after the list, but
yeah. So strive. The way that I put it was strive to set up your children financially, which is just kind of a rephrasing of the same thing. But someone this week, I don't know who it was, pointed out, and I posted it on Twitter, that labor is not a result of sin, right? When Adam fell in the garden, he already had a job. God had given him a job. Labor is not a result of sin. But striving is. And the word that he used was not labor, but not striving. I forget what it was. But the point was, working hard, sweating, exasperation. These are results of the fall, but your occupation is not necessarily. So when you're working hard to set up your children, it's going to be difficult and it's not going to be fun. But that is part of why God put you on this planet. If you don't have a generational perspective on wealth, then you do not understand wealth. There are a lot of people, first generation to wealth, either they get wealthy or their parents get wealthy and they grew up wealthy, who die poor because they did not learn how to manage that prosperity. And if you do not have a generational understanding of wealth, you are going to spend all of your money up until the point when you die, and you're going to leave nothing for your children. And several people are doing that intentionally. How many baby boomers have you met who say, well, I don't care, I'll be dead. Or I'm spending my children's inheritance, just blatantly. They think it's funny.
It's awful.
And, the Bible talks about, and this is not a uniquely, Middle Eastern virtue or anything like that, but it says the righteous man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Okay? One of the reasons that I like buying leather-bound books is because those books will be around for a long time. I plan on giving my books to my children when I die, and a lot of them before I die, because I value these books. The books that I get in nice bindings are books that are very valuable, and valuable for education, for teaching, for tradition. And if that's not the only thing I plan on handing down, I don't have nice generational cars that I can hand down. I can barely keep the ones that I have running, but I have land, I have property, and my children are going to inherit my estate. And that's a good thing. And that's the way it should be. I'm not going to put this thing in a reverse mortgage so that I can go off to Vegas every weekend for the last couple years of my life. That is immoral, and God frowns on that. He frowns on it with a very dark face, and you should be wary of treating your children so disrespectfully.
On that note, it's particularly subversive to see those same people who, like, the way that they justify is like, well, I got everything I have on my own. Mm-hmm. And so I want them to work hard for what they get, like, or I earned this, and now, you need to earn it, my child.
Yeah, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just like I did.
Right, and then what happens is you'll have those same people essentially legislate white privilege laws so that their children have a harder time than a fresh off the boat foreigner, because the law makes it to where the foreigner gets the hand up from their tax dollars. But
have you ever wondered why it seems like every gas station and hotel is run by Indians?
Yep.
Did you know that there are federal laws that give free money to Indians when they come over here to start a business?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that for my children?
I felt that doing me and some friends trying to get like college, not necessarily loans, but like scholarships and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was, well, my dad makes too much money for me to get anything, but at the same time, my dad is not going to give me any money. So
it's the rock in the hard place, right? Your dad makes too much money for you to get free college, but he doesn't make enough money to actually pay for your college.
Right.
Yeah.
So it really upsets me when people go that route. And I mean, I would even put under that number 5, when we talk about handing something down to the next generation, that includes the country that you hand down to them. That includes the neighbors that you hand down to them. If your generation is responsible for completely demographically replacing the founding stock of the nation, that is what your generation as a whole has handed down to your children. And now all those virtues and all those great things that you tried to build, who'd you build it for? For yourself, just to enjoy it during the time that you had it? I mean, I'm living that proverb. I've got 2, maybe 3. I haven't decided about the third one. Trees growing that I'll be very, very old by the time those are useful trees. But we had an oak tree in the front, and it would just give acorns everywhere. So every once in a while we'll find a new like offspring. Like the tree has now like gone in, because we had to cut down the other one. It fell in the house. And so I replanted one in the spot I wanted it to be in. So now it's like caged off and like, don't touch this. This is going to be the new oak tree. Yeah. And well, kids really, but
them too.
Yeah, and the chickens like to peck at stuff. So, anyways, I will be very, very old if I ever do live to see this tree be. But you know, my children will have. Somebody will have this house in my line, and they're going to want that tree there, because right now we're hanging up awnings and all kinds of stuff, and
to try to get a little bit of shade from the setting sun.
Yeah. So it is that proverb of planting trees that you
in whose shade you will never rest.
Under. Yeah.
Yeah. So a generational perspective, not just on monetary wealth, but also on other types of assets, land, property, but also society.
Yeah.
You know, talked about earlier, you know, a high trust society. I want to leave a high trust society to my children. Part of that is by instilling in them the virtues necessary for a high trust society. And part of that is by encouraging those around me to do the same. So point number 5 on my list, point number 6 on your list. Go ahead, Sean.
In so much as it depends on you, help your neighbors achieve the same. So this is
and it's not just the last point; it's the whole list.
Right.
We want our neighbors to achieve all of the things that we just talked about.
Yeah. So this is a point that I essentially stole from Dave Ramsey. If you look at Dave Ramsey's plan, of his is a financial thing. So it's like getting out of debt and then like setting yourself up and then being able to give to others. I see that last bit of it. Now he's got a lot more steps to it, but I see that last bit of like giving back as being something, in our particular case, you're essentially reinvesting in yourself, because like you had said, like if you have good neighbors, that's an investment for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, you know, you said, if everybody in my neighborhood became Christians, that'd be great.
Yeah.
You know, not amazing. Even, know, even just from a selfish perspective, these minorities would stop stealing my bike.
Yeah. I wouldn't have the cops across the street at Knucklehead's house every couple months or
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, even from a selfish perspective, even if we leave religion out of it, I want my neighbors to be Christian and go to church. I want them to marry and have lots of kids. I want them to instill those children with Christian and Western values, because I want my neighbors to be Christian and Western. And I want my neighbors to set their children up financially, to strive to set their children up financially. I want that not only for myself, but for everyone in my community.
Yeah, an example of, I guess, kind of it encouraged me when I saw it during the winter. Um, my my next door neighbor has a son, and I saw him walking home from school with this girl, and when they got in front of his house, she took off. She was wearing his sweater, and I guess she was an idiot and didn't pack a sweater, as women are wont to do. But 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 he was like, okay, yeah, this is this is my sweater. Now I have my sweater, and they went into his house. So just seeing stuff like that, right,
Mhm.
where this is a early teens ish kid, probably 12, 13, something around those numbers, middle schoolish. And so, like, to see that, it was like that was me. I remember doing stuff like that at that
Mhm.
age, and it was because my dad and my grandfather were telling me those are the kind of things you have to do.
Mhm.
Like, you do that
That's what's
because,
expected of you, son.
yes, this is the you do it because it's the right thing to do. Or I guess a better way of saying is, like, this is what we do. So there's this we aspect when you talk about your not only your descendants, but your people as a whole. There's this we aspect. So there's times where I'll catch myself. I'm talking to a 2-year-old, right? My 2-year-old son. We don't do that. Well, what am I saying when I not only you don't do that, I don't do that. Like, it's not just a matter of you're wrong, but we are currently wrong right now. We are not acting in accord with what we have been handed down, and we need to get right. So I
Mhm.
mean, thinking of yourself as a we, I know that hurts the libertarian mind that you are part of a we, but you know what? Living on a deserted island sounds
What do you
pretty
mean there's a
horrible.
collective? I can't believe you would say such an
Yeah.
evil thing.
What? This is crazy.
Mhm.
So, I mean, definitely the my tax dollars seem to believe we're a collective. So,
All right. Well, let's see. This is the meme that we mentioned before.
oh yes, there
This
it
is
is.
something that Sean put together. It says, "Great men are those who do the things necessary for future generations to become great." Now, it sort of begs the question a little bit, because anytime you use a word to define itself, you know,
Yeah.
great men for future generations to become great, but it speaks to something true, which is, no man who is only living for himself is ever going to achieve any lasting good. I mean, it's sort of definitional. If the sum of your creation is yourself, you're not going to have any lasting effect, because you will not last. If you are the recipient of all the good stuff you've ever done, it's going to die with you.
Yep.
So great men are those who do the things necessary. What are the things that are necessary? I think we have a good list here. Be Christian, which means attend church. Marry young and have kids. Have lots of kids.
Yeah.
Um,
There are no
and-
future
yeah,
generations if you don't have kids. Like,
that's right. hmm your line can very easily die with you. Your ancestors who strove through famine, who braved just unimaginable hardship to come to a country that is wild and untamed to this day. I mean, the weather that the Midwest receives at the hands of tornadoes every year is just mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm about to have some weather tonight, so
We're going to get some more rain this week, and it's up in North Texas. It's been some really extreme weather for the last couple days, and the men who braved the wilderness, who built structures for us to live in, who invented air conditioning. By the way, if we did not have air conditioning, it would be practically impossible to live in Texas.
yeah.
I mean, this is it's insane. But the men who did this, they were doing something for future generations. They were not doing it just because, well, it puts money in my pocket and then I can go down and drink it at the booze hall every weekend. They were doing this because they wanted to provide something for their children. And you are the people who have inherited this wonderful Christian heritage, this wonderful Western heritage. Do not squander it by not having children.
Yeah. I want to say the reason that I worded it the way that I did, and I know you're saying it's circular, I get that, but however it is that you define greatness, I think you can essentially plug that in. And I know that, there's men like myself, that's fine, that are never going to do the things that are, memorable for 100 years or something like that. Right. But I can create a household that builds up the next generation, and then maybe one of them will be great. There's an awesome, this isn't a great example because Jonathan Edwards himself was a great man, but Jonathan Edwards had a ton of kids who had a ton of kids. And if you look at, somebody had shown like the amount of like congressmen and lawyers and doctors and essentially like he and his descendants were like running New England within a couple
within 2 generations.
Yeah. I mean, it was
wasn't one of the presidents his grandson-in-law or something like that? I think one of the presidents married his granddaughter, if I'm not mistaken.
But I remember in the reason that I guess another reason that I just liked the way that this came out when I wrote it was that I was in an Old Testament class in college, and the professor had asked, he said, we were talking about Ecclesiastes, right? And he asked the class who, I think it was like, who Saladin is, right? And everyone's just like, what? I've never heard of this dude. Like, that's crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just kind of like, well, yeah, that's okay. Nobody, right? But he's like, and he just basically goes over like all the things that Saladin was able to accomplish, right? And he's like, that proves what Ecclesiastes was saying, that you can do all these great things and no one's going to remember you. You're just, you know what I mean? Like we can talk, like we're talking about like Jonathan Edwards, right? Well, who's to say 500 years from now, people are still going to be talking about Jonathan Edwards. We know Jonathan Edwards because he was an American.
Well, and there will still be people who are watching this podcast and they hear the name Jonathan Edwards and they go, who? I don't know who that is.
But I'll give you another example. And this,
got to reach back for the books here.
Who? Boy, I really wrapped myself up in this one. Who is this? Who is this guy?
John C. Breckinridge.
Yep, this is one of my favorite historical figures, probably my all-time favorite historical figure. Who is he? Most people don't know who this is. Now, if you're a friend of mine, you know who this is because I love this guy.
Because you won't shut up about it.
Yeah, and I gave a presentation to my SCV camp about him. But obviously, he was a Confederate general. He was vice president of the United States. To this day, he is the youngest vice president the United States ever had. And he was the presidential candidate that Lincoln beat. He was the Democratic Party's guy.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on and on about this guy, but the fact that like nobody knows who this is, or if I said like John C. Calhoun, you and I know who that is. Probably a bunch of people listening here. He was a 2-time vice president of the United States, extremely important man for especially Southern politics, but American politics. There's lots of guys that, I can point to this guy I have pictured, not Vegeta here, but this guy I have pictured right here.
Junker Jorg.
Yeah. Some people would be like, I don't know who that is. Or if you said, well, it's Martin Luther, they'd be like, oh, the black guy from the 60s? No, not Martin Luther King or Michael King or whatever his name is. But that's my point, is like there's people who are there's people who they do these great things and they're like world changers in their time. Like you can think you probably 50 years from now, if you ask some kid who's Elon Musk, they wouldn't know who that is. Right? They'd probably only know Donald Trump because he was president and they know him from a list.
Mm-hmm. He's the other president who, has a gap. Yeah, you're going.
Yeah. There you go.
It's going to be a trivia thing.
He'll be a trivia guy. But I'll tell you who will be remembered, at least in my descendants, is this person pictured right up here, who is this is my grandmother holding my daughter. Because they will eventually look, if they don't just have it already written down like I do, but they'll look through their genealogy and say, oh, who was this lady? Oh, wow. Her, she's got descendants that are Confederate veterans or Mayflower Compact signers, Revolutionary War veterans, all that thing. All people who all of their lines came down to her and then eventually me. Those are the people who will be remembered because they had children, they passed something down. I have nothing but great things to say about her. She is my grandmother is the perfect example of someone who passed down many things. In fact, she essentially tried to give away all of her money to her descendants before she died. Like she was just like
going to beat the tax man.
Yes, she was. Well, that might have been part of it too, but she was like, I want you to enjoy this while I can watch you enjoy it. And she was very giving in that regard. And that's the kind of man I hope to be as well. You can't take any of, you can't take any gold with you into heaven. And if you did, the joke I've always heard in church growing up is, like I said, what are you doing with all this pavement? Right? Like,
that's right.
Because so what, I mean, like give it to your kids. They can use it. They can build things. And so I like that. I was making the joke that could be our 15 words. We could add that to the numerology. Get
That's
the
right.
ADL to say 15 is a bad number now.
Great men are those who do the things necessary for future generations to become great. There you go.
There you go. And then we can pretend that was on purpose, why we called it For Future Generations and not after some song.
Hey, it's a great song. It's a banger. If y'all don't know, this is a little bit of trivia for those who are staying late in the show. Look up For Him, For Future Generations. It is a fantastic song, and it is the inspiration for the name of this show.
It shows up every time I try to find the show.
My goal with this show is for the show to get large enough to where when you look it up on YouTube, this is what pops up instead of there's two things. There is the song from For Him, the CCM band from the 90s and early 2000s, and then there is there's some podcast that some black girl out of Miami does. And I haven't listened to it. It might be a great show for all I know, but my aspiration is for that one to get buried as well.
Oh, that's funny.
All right,
I
let's
wanted
see.
to look. I wanted to look at. Oh my goodness! I just pulled up a. I was pulling up Twitter because I wanted to look at this thread that I had put up.
Yeah,
and
so I have that pulled up. That was where I was going to go next.
Because the other Paul posted something yesterday that is pretty ridiculous. That's what made me laugh. So go ahead and pull up what you got.
So this here is a post from some guy named Sean Russell Book. And he says, tonight on the podcast, we are looking to express a positive vision for the new Christian right. This is largely in response to popular attacks against our guys. What are some things you would like to see addressed, and what needs to be a part of the new Christian right platform? So here is Alex Ola, I believe it's Oliar.
Oliar,
right?
Yeah,
Oliar.
He's usually listening sometimes in the chat.
Sorry, Alex, for constantly mispronouncing your name. But he says, one, what sensical immigration actually is. All right. 2, blasphemy laws. 3, welfare eradication. 4, sacralism. 5, banning James White from using X. 6, tax policy. 7, elimination of the judicial system. 8, fixing the legislature. And 9, changing voting laws. That's just a few of my quick thoughts. So I have some thoughts about this kind of list. Do you have some thoughts about this, Sean?
Yeah, I had made the comment, if you, I guess, expand that thread, but I had made the comment that no, you clicked
wrong
to
button.
Make
wrong
a new
button.
comment. Just click on. There you go.
I
had said that. Yeah, there's some good stuff on it, but I did want to point out that it's noteworthy that none of these things could be changed in our own homes. They're all big picture agendas. And it's possible that he misunderstood the topic. That was his comment under that, and that's fine. But I wanted to point out the kind of the Jordan Peterson thing about cleaning your room. Like there was this. He said that quite a bit, but there was a cool,
clean your room, Bucko.
Yeah. There was a clip of some blue-haired wench asking him something about like global warming or whatever. And he, Jordan Peterson was like, people like this come up with these big picture ideas and they make that their whole personality and their whole reasoning for like why things can't be good, because they have no power over it. And the things they do have power over, they don't do anything about.
Yeah.
And so that's what he means.
That's getting back to some of the things that we were talking about earlier in the show, the red pill movement, the manosphere. A lot of it was, hey, look, you can't change women's behavior. You can't change family law. You can't change the way that you are going to be mistreated in the courts. But what you can change is the fact that you're a fat slob. So go to the gym. Yeah. Get up and run. Get some durable trades, learn some skills. And that's a very empowering thing to tell a young man. Look, yeah, I know it sucks. Nothing you can do about it. But what can you fix? Here's something you can do. Strive for that.
Yeah, and I mean those are good things to do. But I can like speed run that list if you want to.
Talking about the things that you can change.
The Alex Oliar comment.
Oh, okay. Let me.
Because like I said, I did want to put forth like a positive thing, like that. These are the things I think that the new Christian right should be putting. These are big picture things. I honestly should have given this a more fair shake, so I'm going to do that now. Sensical immigration. I would say this
How
is
about
me
none for a little bit.
None, yeah. I would say I would like immigration law in an ideal world to be that the only way to become an American is to marry an American, and your citizenship is based off of your marriage to that person. What that does is it allows for the freedom of people to marry whoever they want and to live in America with that person. Now, is that ideal? well, it's better than what we have.
Yeah,
And
but you have to meet those Americans overseas because you can't come here.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I think that would be a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
Because Americans are some of the most traveled people in the world.
Mhm.
Europeans give us a hard time sometimes because they're like, "What do you mean you've never been outside of your state?" And then you just superimpose Texas over Europe, and you're like, "You've only been to, you live in South Germany. You've been to France, Belgium, Italy, and Poland. Okay, I've been to Texas, and it's bigger than all of those." It's like, okay, but Americans are extremely well traveled. Most Americans, just like most Europeans, have not been very far from the place where they were born, but more Americans travel for work than practically any other country. And if those people want to find spouses in other European countries and marry and bring them here, I have no problem with that.
There you go. Blasphemy laws. Yeah, I'm for blasphemy laws. I think that we need to.
The founding fathers were for blasphemy laws. At the foundation of our nation, we had blasphemy laws. So it's a very American thing. It does not go against the First Amendment to have blasphemy laws, despite what your libertarian uncle screamed about when he got drunk.
I don't think that I don't think that anyone should be able to, as far as blasphemy laws, it should be illegal to say negative things about Jesus Christ.
Simple as.
Yep.
You're going to have to hang half of Hollywood, but I'm okay with that.
Yep. And also, I would like to see laws where non-whites cannot talk crap about whites. That'd be a law. I think that's a fair law. It's our country. Why are you allowed to come here and live off of us and say bad things about us?
If you went to Japan and started talking about how the Japanese need to be eradicated and replaced, I think they would have a problem with that. I think you would get deported. I think there's nothing wrong with that. Yep.
Let's see. Number 3, welfare eradication. Yeah. I was trying to think of a real quick situation where I wouldn't agree with that, but I think I agree with that. My mother, for the record, used to work for the welfare department at the county.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a story that she told me. I guess I was too young to really know what's going on, but it was like a take your kid to work day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had said, Mom, I don't understand. Why do you work for people who don't work? That was me.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would get rid of it. I think that what we used to have is people would go to the church.
Yeah, but if you do that, isn't that sacralism?
Well, so the other Paul in the chat dropping bangers in the comments. He just did an episode on sacralism. I finally got around to listening to that. And I had not known the formal definition of such a thing until I listened to that. But sacralism is essentially the state being nice to the church. Like that seems to more or less be what's going on. It defends the church's right to exist. Of course, the state or the king, I guess in an ideal situation, does have an army. The church does not have an army. And so for the church to be defended,
the state has to do it.
It would require the state. Yeah. So you would need both of God's kingdoms and his right hand and his left hand and helping each other out, And I think that things like blasphemy laws and I think that would be an example of that.
If you haven't watched the video that the other Paul did with Joel Webbin of Right Response Ministries,
he has
on
a
sacralism.
the other Paul
go watch
says
that one.
the other Paul has a comment here. He says, haha, not quite. Sacralism sees a close unity of church and state such that the church is privileged over and against false religion.
Yeah,
I think that's
and
more
in
or
some
less what I
cases
said.
privileged over and against other Christian denominations.
Yeah, which I'm fine with.
When the United States were founded, 2 of the states had a state church. And that's not to say that other denominations were not allowed in the state, but if they wanted to be there, they had to ask permission, and they were not given a privileged status. They were seen as outsiders. To this day, in Bavaria is a Catholic state, and the Catholic Church receives money from the state for its functions there. And it receives a privileged position among all of the other denominations. And I see no problem there. I went to church in Bavaria, to a Baptist church, a church that was considered a cult, just an American-style Baptist church, only in German. And there was nothing, the state wasn't coming and auditing our numbers and making sure we weren't indoctrinating children or anything like that, but we were still legally classified as a cult because we were not the state church. So I have been in a sacralist state, in a sacral state, and I did not get drowned. I was not hung. I was not burned at the stake. None of these things actually happened. None of these fetishes that these people keep on touting about how sacralism is going to drown your grandchildren. Literally none of it happened.
I was I don't know if I said this on air, but I was talking with you about this, that I was doing my genealogy of my mother's father's line. So like his dad's going back, and trying to find my mother's maiden name origins. And it took me to Germany, where I was able to see records. I had to have our one of our buddies who speaks German tell me what was actually in the record, but it was essentially a baptism record from one of my direct ancestors of the state Lutheran church in Germany. So that's pretty cool, man. Like, and then, when they came to America, they were born and raised in Lutheran churches, and they're buried there. And so that was pretty cool to see. That it was like, oh, okay, well, state church came through. Next one, he says, banning James White from using X. That's very funny. If James White ever wants to have a discussion with any of our guys, I'm more than down for that. I think we've both talked at length that we've benefited greatly from him, and if he ever wants to reach out, even if it's just on the old Twitter machine, then it's fine with us.
Absolutely.
Tax policy. That's such a, man. We've kind of done episodes.
The thing is, I don't know that there's necessarily a Christian position on tax policy. It's, it was kind of like that discussion we were having earlier about the difference between Christian and Western virtues. Tax policy is something that can be egregious, and it can be lenient. And that, while I would rather live under one than the other, that doesn't necessarily speak to the righteousness of a nation. So I don't know that that's really something for the new Christian right to tackle. Now,
that's a good point.
As a guy who is nerdy about economics, I could tell you what I think would be great tax policy, but it doesn't really fall into the category of new Christian right. It really falls into my position on, economics. What do I think are the best situations, the most just, and those most conducive to prosperity?
I agree with that take. I don't think it's really our position, but I will say very quickly, I believe that taxes taken from the American people should not be spent on anything other than American interests. No foreign aid, no crazy thing.
Yeah,
Now people,
why are my tax dollars paying for gay pride parades in Pakistan?
yeah, the craziest one, and Rand Paul. I got this from Rand Paul. He was saying that we give foreign aid to China, but we owe money to China. Like our debt is bought by China. So instead of paying off our debt, we just give them free money. And then China is like one of our biggest enemies.
Geopolitical foes. Yeah.
But anyways, that as far as tax policy, I came from a libertarian background, and maybe some of this is just a bit of a hangover for it. But when I was like really hardcore libertarian, I would tell people taxation is theft, and they would say, well, we need taxes for
my roads,
these things, right? Okay. That list that people would give me, those are the only things that taxes should be spent on. So if that's your answer to taxation is theft, but we need taxes for blank, roads, parks,
ambulances,
all that kind of, the fire department, whatever, that's fine. Those are the things we'll spend taxes on. I believe in having a strong military, but I will say that the strength of the American military comes from the strength of the individual soldiers. It doesn't come from the amount of money that we pump into it. And unfortunately, we have weakened the strength of the American soldier because we now have like trainees and women. I mean, just women in general. Yeah. So anyways, tax policy, it should be.
Well, I will say, there's something to be said for the strength of individual soldiers, but warthogs are bought with tax money.
Right. But I what I'm saying is like the way that those things are operated is the strength. Like everyone has the thing, except for like undeveloped nations like Afghanistan or whatever, where they're, tying 12 half-used batteries together to be able to make a pipe bomb or whatever. Anyways, they're very ingenuitive though. Let's see, eliminating the judicial system. I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
I don't think we should eliminate the judicial system.
Yeah, that's a bizarre thing to say.
The Bible has nothing bad to say about judges. So I'm not sure what the idea there is. Fixing the legislature. Now, legislature and judiciary are two different things. I would actually be okay with eliminating the legislature and keeping the judiciary.
Yeah.
Because
you're talking about monarchy.
Yeah, I mean, how important is it to have a bunch of nerds writing laws versus somebody who actually, two hookers show up and one of them's got a baby and one of them says, hey, that's my baby. It's like, that is a real problem that somebody has to solve.
Yeah.
Right? At some point, there's a judge somewhere who's going to have to call the shots. So, fixing the legislature, definitely. But is that a position for the New Christian Right? Again, like tax policy, it might be downstream of some of the policies and principles that we impose. But, the things that we can fix in our life will lead to children who will behave themselves better and be more effective at preserving good things in our society. And fixing the legislature is maybe downstream of that. But what am I going to do in my life to fix the legislature? I'm not going to Luigi Mangione anybody.
Yeah, and that's really all you can say.
And that's all that one guy can do, really.
And that's what bothers me about the kind of conversations people will have about, like, Americans are letting XYZ happen in their country. Well, what's the alternative, dude? I mean, there's only so much I could do short of violence. And if I do violence, then I'm the bad guy. So really, there is no... So as far as fixing the legislature, I think that representative government is overrated. We've talked about that at length on this podcast. And I appreciate all that my ancestors attempted and all that they fought for. But, maybe, I wish George Washington would have seized the crown when it was handed to him on a silver platter. So that's my answer.
Would have been different.
He says changing voting laws. Yeah, like I said, representative government is overrated, but short of monarchy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, repeal the 19th. I think that's a good start.
We say
that is
free white men
maybe
of good
achievable. There are things that can be achieved in life. There are some things that can't. Repeal the 19th is a Christian position, though, because the Bible says that women should not be an authority over a man.
Yep.
And
Isaiah also says it's a curse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That women and children.
So women should not be put in elected office. Unlike tax policy, that is a Christian position. The Bible speaks to it directly.
So, Alex, I am sorry that I came off as kind of short. I was dealing with kids all day, and I saw that, and I was like, nah, let me just. So it was more pithy than it should have been, but I hope that was a helpful.
Yeah. I mean, and good thoughts. Maybe not necessarily what we were thinking about. But
yeah, it wasn't a great way I worded it. Dirty Thomas, is there any other kind? Says, I don't know what that means.
Foreign missions as a part of empire building.
He clearly means a part, not a part. Yeah. I had asked him, you want that to be part of the platform? He says, always thought so, even before the New Christian Right or Christian nationalism had a name. My answer to that was the New Christian Right is tired. So I guess I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. Sorry, guys. The New Christian Right is tired of quote unquote missionaries stepping over our own brothers and sisters to evangelize the third world. So that's going to be a hard pass. And I stand by that. My issue with foreign missions in its current state is that we are not currently a majority Christian country.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't mean that in the pop Baptist theology way of like, but you're not like a true Christian man. Like, I mean, like, but literally.
Did you have the experience where you felt Jesus coming into your heart at Burning Man Festival?
Yeah. So, yeah, I just I don't believe in
the thing is, utilizing missionaries as a part of empire building is something to do after we've won. And I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're anywhere near there yet. I always found it bizarre. So I was kind of a missionary a little bit here and there, off and on, when I was a young man before I got married. And one of the things that always baffled me is I would come home and I would try to do the same kind of door knocking and missionary work that I did overseas, and I could get nobody to go with me.
Yep.
It was like I would be like, okay, let's, I know how to do this. I've been doing it with foreigners. It's got to be easier to do with Americans who speak my language, no interpreter. And I'd be like, hey, you, me, this guy, let's go into this neighborhood and just knock on doors and chat people up and be like, hey, here's this church around the corner. Come to our church. We'll see you Sunday. And, people didn't want to do it. But if I made a presentation to a church and I said, hey, I'm going to India, would you like to pay for my airplane tickets? They would put money toward that. Yep. If I wanted to do the same thing in the neighborhood and I was like, hey, could you pay for my gas? I don't think I'd be getting the same kind of support. Would you pay for pizza for a bunch of kids? Now, some churches, I will say, do things like that. And that's much to their credit. They'll be like, hey, we're going to have the youth group go in here and they're going to do X, Y, and Z to try and reach the people in this neighborhood right outside of our church, walking distance from the front doors of our building, so that we encourage them to come to church. And I think that's a good thing. And I just wish more churches would do it. Get that missionary fund and put it into your youth group and get that youth group actually evangelizing people in your neighborhood.
We're at my church. My church is essentially in my own neighborhood, which is a dream come true, by the way. That has always been what I wanted, and it finally came to pass. And so I'm very, very happy with that. One of the elders, actually the godfather of my daughter, is trying to put together some guys, and that's been kind of a stressor, but I think I'm about to start pushing for for things to move forward on that. So I'm 100% with you as far as like just going door to door, because it's my own neighborhood.
Yeah.
I would love to just be like, hey guys, you know me. This church is right here. If it's not for you, then that's okay, whatever. But I mean, I get people all the time asking me like, hey, can we go to your church? Whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's right over here. And then I explain what kind of church it is. They're like, I kind of want something where I just kind of sing songs and feel good. And I'm like, nah, that's not us.
Yeah.
In fact,
Are
you might
sure
feel
you're a
bad
Christian?
by the time. Yeah, you might feel awful by the time you're done. Constantinus Fundatus. Is that a boy? That's
Constantinus Fundatus, a clear elucidation of just war theory and the place of violence in ruling men. Many get bogged down on these points in ignorance of the historical Christian solutions to these problems. Yeah, well, I think that's something that should be coming from the pulpits. Just war theory is laid out in the Old Testament quite clearly, and it's a good thing to be familiar with. But I think the more important reason to know it is not necessarily because we need to be sure, that we are acting justly in the way that we wage war, as much as it is for us to be observing the way in which we are being treated, to note that, hey, what is going on in our society is a war and it's not being fought justly. Just a way of being aware of the times. So, yeah, that is something that pastors should be talking about. That is something for the New Christian Right to consider. I don't know that it's necessarily going to solve all of our problems. But yeah, something to think about. We should maybe do a show on just war theory. Who do you the just war theory expert?
I would say I would need to do a lot more reading on just war theory, because and here's the problem that I would have with just jumping right into it, is that just war theory is a formal name of a formal system of things. It's not just like, what do you think are the just ways of doing war? Like, just war theory has a history to it.
Yeah, and if you're trying to import like Geneva Convention nonsense into that, Geneva Convention or like Geneva Suggestions.
Yeah.
No, just war theory is ridiculous when it comes to things like the Geneva Convention, because during World War II, the Soviets, did not sign the Geneva Convention, and they did not act like they signed the Geneva Convention. So the Germans had to behave according to the Geneva Convention, or else they'd get slammed for being inhuman brutes. But the Soviets didn't, because they didn't sign the paper. But the British and the Americans had to abide by the rules. But they could provide the Soviets with, all the materials they needed to break the rules, and it's okay for them. It's like, this is just,
actually,
it's nonsense.
The first country to break the Geneva Convention was you already know
Great
what I'm going to say, right?
I'm going to guess.
Nope. Do you know what what time frame the Geneva Convention was written?
No, but I know it happened in Geneva.
It was written about 1863, which should give you the answer.
Well, I think I know who's the first country to break the Geneva Convention then.
Oh, there you go.
The United States of America, or otherwise known as the Union Forces.
Yep. That would be it.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
As they were writing that, the Union forces are like burning people's houses down and crazy.
Burning whole cities to the ground and causing the population to die of exposure in the nearby forest.
Oh, yeah.
And then a couple hundred years later, bragging about it, saying, oh, yeah, it was a good thing.
But from what I understand about just war theory, it's more about the reasons for going to war than actual, how many bullets you're allowed to put in a person.
Or what kind of bullets. Only full metal jacket, no expanding bullets. Yeah.
Oh, but I did.
Just war theory, according to the Bible, is really just about, when you conduct war, how can you do it? And the rules are much more loose.
I want to talk about before you close off. I don't know if that's what you were trying to do.
I was going to catch up on comments and then close
Oh,
out. But if you've got one more thing, we can hit that first.
Let's catch up on comments, and then I wanted to talk about some SCV stuff.
Oh yeah, we were supposed to open with that. I forgot.
Right.
My bad, dude.
No, that's all right.
Let's see. We'll pick up with this. The other Paul says German with a hard G and a hard R. I've got Paul. I don't know how to break this to you, but German is with a soft G, but there's a hard R. So.
We're gonna have to start calling the podcast for future generations, because the other Paul is really
generations with a hard
really
G.
Holding on to that, yeah.
The other Paul talking about sacralism. He says sacralism is a close unity of church and state, such that the church is privileged over and against false religion. He also says anti-sacralist Baptists be like, persecute me harder, daddy. Yeah, there does seem to be some of that where it's there's this weird idea in the church where it's like the only true church is one that is born out of persecution. So if you aren't being persecuted, are you actually a Christian, my guy? So if you live in a Christian society and the church is actually healthy and strong, then it must be illegitimate in some way. Mm. And this comes out of this idea of conversionism. It's like, well, only true Christians are people who like had a road to Damascus experience. I was at Burning Man on shrooms. And Jesus came to me and he was like, hey, man, stop being such a dullard. And I got my life right. It's like, the best Christian witness is actually the guy who says, yeah, I don't remember being baptized because I was so young. I've been a Christian my entire life. I didn't fornicate before I got married. I married a young virgin. I was a virgin. We had children. I raised them in the church. I baptized them in the church. That is a true Christian witness, and it's a good thing. And for people to come along and be like, oh, well, can you really know you're Christian if you didn't like live in the world first and like hit rock bottom and then cry out to Jesus with a broken heart in the rain, shouting at the sky? It's like, I think you're over romanticizing things a bit, and it does sound a bit fetishistic.
And it's almost like the spiritual version of what we were saying that boomers largely do with their finances. Is it like boomers, whereas they're talking about, well, I want you to start from scratch financially. A lot of people will be like, well, I have to start from scratch spiritually because I have to, start.
I have to make my own way, man.
Yeah. I have to be hostile to the gospel at some point in my life, or else I can't, have a cool testimony. And
let's see. Reformed Rogue says the parish model for church and work should be the plan for the future.
I don't know if I understand that comment.
It'd be nice.
What is he advocating for? I don't understand
So in a sacral society, what you will do is you will divide your territory up into parishes, and different churches will be over, as it were, different neighborhoods and different cities. And so each person, kind of like you, in your neighborhood, you have a neighborhood church that you can literally walk to. I mean, I've been to your house, I've been to your church, and it's not a quick walk, but you can walk there.
Yeah, it's probably less than a mile.
Yeah, it's probably right about a mile. So not saying you'd want to in the summer, but the idea that your church can be that close, that you can be that close to your church can have, political authority of some sort in your neighborhood, to where it's like your local government says, hey, we're going to tear down, these houses to make way for this, that, and the other. And the church comes in and says, hey, you shouldn't do that. These houses belong to poor people who are just trying to make a living, or whatever it is. Just having a church that's involved in your local community, that is respected and valued by that community, is a good thing. So fully endorse the parish model for church and work. All right, Sean, you had some exciting stuff happen at your local SCV. Let's hear about it.
So it was not my local SCV. It was actually our division.
That would be
because Texas. So
The
way
entire
that
Texas division? Okay.
all of Texas, yeah. So for those not familiar, the SCV is the Sons of Confederate Veterans, of which we are both members, and which is based. And so the way that it works is that you have your local camps, and then you have brigades, which is like a region. Like my region is roughly like DFW and some surrounding areas. Jeff is in a different brigade within Texas, but then your division is your state. So all of the divisions in the SCV are based on your state. So all of Texas is the Texas division. Earlier today, they ended. It was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Texas division had their reunion, which really means a business meeting, and then we do awards and stuff like that. We elect new officers. So I got to be part of that because it was in Mineral Wells, which, by the way, is a very, very cool city, which I would like to vacation to at some point. But I was there for business. We just drove in. It was like an hour west of where I'm at. And we just did that for the day on Saturday. But anyways, yeah, we had our meeting. And that's what I know. I put this on so I could wear it, but this is the medal. So you're supposed to wear the medal like after you do the meeting. You're supposed to wear it at your next meeting, right? Like to show everyone.
And to pin it to your T-shirt.
Yeah, you're supposed to like show everyone like, oh yeah, I was there. So this is, for those that don't know, with the reverse colors like this is the flag of the Army of the Trans-Mississippi, which has nothing to do with cutting things off, but the Trans-Mississippi is the the Trans-Mississippi is the essentially west of the Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all the fighting in Missouri, the fighting in Texas,
that'd be the
the escapades off into New Mexico to try to seize the railways,
Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
And obviously all of Texas, most of Louisiana. Anyways, because we're on the opposite side of the Mississippi from our capital in Virginia, so this is the Army of the Trans-Mississippi. The story behind it, by the way, I learned this over the weekend, was that the flags that they got at the time were from Cuba. And when they sent in the order for the flags, the Cubans got the colors backwards. So they said, well, I guess that's a flag for our entire army because that's who we got the flags for. So
hilarious.
That became the. So if you ever see that with the opposite colors from the usual battle flag, that is the Army of the Trans-Mississippi, which we are a part of, being Texas in Kirby Smithdom. That's a other story, but so we had our meeting. We elected new officers. Really excited. We got some younger guys in there, and that was the big call over the weekend, was that the SCV needs younger guys. And when they say younger guys, I'll give you some perspective. I was in an elevator with this older woman, probably in at least her 80s. And she looked up at me and this kid, like an actual like younger guy, but he was like way taller than me. He was probably like 18-ish, something like that. I'm old enough to say 18 is a kid. But she was like, oh, are you two students? I said, ma'am, I am 36 years old. She was like, what? Like, so that give you some perspective of how old some corners of the SCV are. But but yeah, we're moving guys up. And then much to my surprise, I was awarded another medal. I got the Silver Cross for meritorious service. So I don't have the physical medal yet. We're waiting till the next camp meeting to go through and present all the medals. But This here that I have up here, this is the bronze cross. So I got the next one up is the silver cross. For those who don't know, this is my, what do they call it? The war service medal or something like that. And this is for being in Afghanistan. The SCV gives its own medal. So very, very excited about things going on in the SCV, especially in Texas. Next month, we will have the national reunion in Houston. Which I'm hoping to get to. So yeah, very, very exciting things. We were talking about it in one of my chats earlier today about like that everyone should join if you can join the SCV. It's a great organization. It's got a lot of history. It was founded by actual sons of Confederate veterans because the Confederate veterans themselves wanted to carry on their legacy, and that is a big part of what we were talking about today, is just carrying on your legacy and honoring those before you. In
the charge that well, I don't know if it's every camp meeting, but every camp meeting I've been to, mine and a couple others, always begins with the charge from I forget his name.
Stephen Dill Lee.
Stephen Dill Lee in New Orleans, Louisiana. He charged the sons of the Confederate veterans that they will carry on the name and that they will vindicate the service of the men who fought and died for their nation. So, yeah, that's what it's about.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a wonderful organization. There are some boomers among them, but for the most part, because it's a historical society and because it is a fraternity of related people, people who are related by blood and by nation, it does a lot of great stuff. Highly recommend it. If you are in the South, you should look up your local SCV, become a member. If you're a young man, if you are a right-wing dissident, join your local SCV and drag that window.
Yep. I can read it real quick now that we're talking about it because I love this.
Yeah, the charge. It's wonderful.
The charge is part of a much longer speech. He says, "To you, sons of Confederate veterans, we will commit the vindication of the cause for which we fought. To your strength will be given the defense of the Confederate soldier's good name, the guardianship of his history, the emulation of his virtues, the perpetuation of those virtues which he loved and which you love also, and those ideals which made him glorious and which you also cherish. Lieutenant General Stephen Dill Lee, Commander General, United Confederate Veterans, New Orleans, Louisiana, April 25th, 1906. So yeah, an actual Confederate veteran, a general to boot.
General in the SCV or general in the
Stephen Dill Lee was a general in the Confederacy. He was a lieutenant general.
Fantastic.
He which is that 3 stars in the Confederate Army? I want to say so. That seems right to me. But yeah, he said that, and that was the United Confederate Veterans. So that was the organization that was made of Confederate veterans. But then he gave this charge like, hey, you guys that are our sons, we want you to pass on what we are doing here today. And so, like, for instance, my camp is the descendants of a former UCV camp. So our camp became a Sons of Confederate Veterans camp as the actual Confederate veterans started dying off. So yeah, there's still people alive today who are like grandsons of Confederate veterans. Like they're very few and far between, but they get recognized at like national conventions and stuff.
This is pretty cool. Y'all should look up the wiki for Stephen D. Lee. He was adjutant to PGT Beauregard, or aide-de-camp, rather, to PGT Beauregard. He was at the demand for the evacuation of Fort Sumter He was at Fort Sumter, and from there right on to the end, he was he was in the East, he was in the West. Guy got around.
He died very shortly after giving that speech. He died in 1908, and I think that speech was 1906.
That speech was 19. Yeah.
So.
Yep.
There you go.
Oh, all right. Well, one last comment from Reformed Rogue. He says, "Sadly, I am no longer in the South." Well, Rogue,
it'd be like that.
Come back to the Promised Land. We'll be happy to see you around.
Even when you're not deep in the heart of Texas, Texas is still deep in the heart, right?
That's right.
You carry it with you.
You can take the boy out of the South, but you can't take the South out of the boy.
Yeah. The South exists as a bloodline. They had actually more or less used that language at the convention. Our speaker was a former commander of the entire SCV. He was like the top guy. I forget exactly what the title is, but he had spoken and he was saying, everyone in this room is related. Our blood connects us to the Confederacy and these people who fought for this one ideal. And I thought that was really powerful to actually say, like, hey, we are connected by blood. Like, this is more than just we have feelings or anything like that. Like, we are all related to this period of history and this one struggle by actual blood.
Yep.
So
blood fought for soil.
That's right.
Make of that what you will. All righty. Well, folks, it has been nearly a 3-hour show. I think this takes the cake for the longest one so far.
Ooh, it might be.
it is late in the day. But thanks for sticking around for as long as y'all did. We hope that y'all have a wonderful rest of your Lord's Day. And go to bed, because tomorrow is the day that God has prepared for us. He has prepared good works for us to do in it. So hope that this podcast has been a blessing to you, and hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. Farewell.